next question is, what about receipts? What if a client doesn't have them anymore? Honestly, there's not a ton you can do if clients don't have their receipts. I would say if you can find any online like Amazon and track those down, that would be helpful, and definitely put into practice going forward that we save all the receipts and we organize them in this way. The trouble would come if you were audited by the IRS, and I actually don't know the answer to what they do if you're just like, we don't got any receipts. It's probably not the best. And I will say for some of my clients that have a good receipt process usually, but then like they lose one receipt, or if there's multiple people that are supposed to be collecting receipts and someone misses one, we have a missing receipt form. So they're supposed to fill that out with the vendor, the amount, and maybe why the receipt is missing. All right, this person asks, how long do I spend on calls with my clients? And the answer is honestly as little as possible. I don't prefer being on the phone, and most of my clients actually don't want to be on long phone calls either. So usually at the beginning of our relationship, when I'm kind of training with the client and getting to know their business, I might have a 30-minute call once a week. So maybe I do some of their books and then I have a bunch of questions and I can follow up, and then sometimes it's just easier on the phone than, through email for a really long email. And I used to offer packages that included like a monthly half-an-hour call with my clients, but I kind of have phased that out. So I really try to not spend a lot of time on the phone unless it's like a special situation. And of course you can set this up however you like with your clients, and it might change client to client, but it's totally up to you. All right, this person is asking, how many transactions is a lot? They have 300 transactions a week between deposit, expenses, and payroll. And they spend 2 hours on the books 5 days a week. I would say this is a pretty time-intensive client. They said it's a restaurant too, so I've actually never had a restaurant as a client, but I have heard that there's a lot of transactions, which makes sense if you have a lot of customers coming into your restaurant. 2 hours a day, so 10 hours a week is a lot. The most per week I've ever worked for a client is a 7-hour day, and that was honestly too much. And that was like a $3 million business, I think. And so I think it just depends on how the business is run and how it's set up. Like my bookkeeping business probably has maybe 10 transactions a week, maybe 20, but like way less than 50 a week. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty time intensive. And if you're charging a fixed rate, I would make sure you're being paid pretty well for all of those hours that you work. All right, this next person is talking about imposter syndrome, and they've taken classes, they've done certifications, have all their ducks in a row, and they still feel like they can't get a client. For you, I would say just try to get experience anywhere you can. So, is there a local preschool that you can offer 6 months of bookkeeping for free? Or any small business or anyone in your network? And I know it's not super fun to work for free, but it really does help you feel like, oh, I can do this. It demystifies the process and you're like, okay, I know how to do bookkeeping and I'm not a fraud. So either volunteer for a small business, or you could also answer some ads on a job posting site like Craigslist and see if you can get an office job where you go to the office and you work a certain amount of hours, and maybe it's not your perfect job, but you can do it for a year or two and get some experience under your belt until you feel more confident. All right, this person says they bought something with cash, and how do you deal with that in QuickBooks? So it might depend a little bit on the situation. Usually when I've come across this, it's like the business owner paying cash for something. And so in that case, I would do a journal entry. So one line of the journal entry would be the whatever expense it was, like if it was office supplies. And then the other line would be an equity account owner's contribution. So the owner is contributing something to the business. So it's kind of hard for me to know without knowing more about this, but another thing you could Google and see how to do is a petty cash account. So I've learned how to do that in the past, but I just haven't really done it that much. And so that is a way that a business owner can keep a little stash of cash, maybe like $100 or $200, like in the office in cash in case they need to pay cash for things. And there's a way that you can record that in QuickBooks. And then I think maybe they just keep their own log, maybe a written log, as they spend that cash. Next one, am I self-employed? Yes. Am I able to sign off on ledgers, or is a chartered accountant who is able to sign off? And this is terminology I'm not super familiar with, so it could be that they're from another region that I'm not aware of, like what signing off on ledgers entails. And so maybe a business has a policy where a CPA or someone high up has to sign off on the account when it is like closed for the year or closed for the month. Or the other thing could be during tax time. I'm not a tax preparer, so I do not sign off on any taxes. So I organize all the finances and I send reports to their tax preparer, and then the tax person is the one who does everything with the IRS. So I do not sign off on that type of stuff. But other than that, like if I'm just working for like a small business owner and we're just going along doing our books, I am the sole person who is dealing with the books and like signing off on everything. This person says, I'm looking at Liscio. Have you heard of them? And what are my thoughts? I've definitely heard of them. I've never used Liscio, but it is a software where you can manage and communicate with your clients. I went to like a sales pitch webinar one time for Liscio, and it did come recommended by someone I trust. I was in a group of bookkeepers that specialize in lawyers, and so we would meet once a month and like talk about different bookkeeper things. And during that one time, someone from Liscio came in and talked to us. And for me, it hasn't been something that I want to pay for, but I do think it's reputable and it does help out a lot of bookkeepers. You could ask in a bookkeeper forum, maybe on Facebook, and see if anyone actually uses it and what they think. All right, this person is asking, how do I handle the logistics of receiving paper documents? This is not a dumb question at all, and it's kind of a challenge actually. I do have an older video called like the Paperless Bookkeeper where I tell different ways you can get documents from clients. Maybe I should remake that actually, because I feel like that's pretty old. It was funny because I would like take a piece of paper, like a check, and then I would like burn it, literally light it on fire. So that was kind of entertaining video to make. But basically I just use online technology. So as much as possible, if I can make a spreadsheet about it, I'm going to. If I need detail about all the deposits, I'll just be like, here's a spreadsheet, enter them in here. And then you can also train people who work in your client's office to enter some things in QuickBooks. So there are certain permissions that you can give them where they can only see like invoices if you want someone in the office to either input information for you and then you send out the invoices, or if it's easier to offload that task to someone else. I mean, check images are now in the bank, so I just go to the bank and look at check images. I've used Google Drive folders that they can scan stuff in and then put them in the folder. And then occasionally I will have a local client who, if I need something from them, I'll just get the paper from them on like a monthly. Usually it's just like once a month, and then I can enter everything in. Ooh, this is a good question. This person is asking if they should open a physical local accounting office. And they're like, do you think it'll actually bring in more clients, or is it a waste of money? This person also says they have a lot of clients and they're considering bringing on new bookkeepers. And I feel like this kind of comes down to personal preference. I personally prefer to run my business just out of my home, so I don't have that expense. My clients really never need to come into the office. And I also have contractors that work for me, and they also don't come into the office. They actually work in like 3 different states. But I don't know, sometimes I feel like it would be fun to set up an office, like an actual office space. I did make a video about that, about a bunch of different options for office spaces. So there's co-working spaces, there's places you can rent just temporarily or like by the hour, I think. And so maybe if you needed like a professional space to meet with a client, you could just rent that short term. But I do see the value, especially if you have employees working for you to all be under one roof. That does tend to help with communication and streamline processes. And sometimes it's just more fun and people want to get out of the house. And I'm sure there's a wide range of how much you would pay for an office space depending on where you are and how big it is. So maybe if you're in a smaller town and you want to rent a little office space and it costs you like $1,000 and that's worth it, and that would improve your work life, I'd say go for it. Oh, someone asked about my keyboard, where I got my keyboard. I love this keyboard and it's like very clicky. I just got off Amazon. I will link it for you guys in the description box. Do I think Bookkeeper Launch would work well for Canadians? Yes, I do, because you still have the Pro Advisor certification, and a lot of it is just like how to run your business. And so it's not super US based. And I'm pretty sure they do have a large contingent of Canadians as well. I know they have like a Facebook group just for Canadians through Bookkeeper Launch. So yeah, you could email their customer service if you wanted to be sure, but I've heard before that it works well for Canadians. All right, this is a question on my quarterly taxes video. I get a lot of questions on this video because I think it's not just bookkeepers watching that. So how do you overpay when quarterly due dates are after each quarter? So basically their question is, why would you be paying the wrong amount on your quarterly taxes? Like, why wouldn't it be accurate? And there's a couple reasons. Basically, they're estimates. So you don't have to be exact. And a lot of times your estimate is based on what you made the year before. So if your income has changed, either gone up or down, your estimate, so the percentage might also change. Plus you might have different deductions, or maybe first quarter you make a ton of income and then your business is seasonal, so you make like nothing in the summer. And so it's just sometimes hard to predict exactly how much to pay in taxes. But the system is set up for that. So they're called quarterly estimates, and then during tax time at the end of the year, everything gets like evened out and you will either pay the difference or get some money back. Okay, this is kind of a hard one. This person commented on my video that's all about a whole bunch of different classes you can take to learn bookkeeping and the pros and cons of each one. And they say, what would I recommend for someone that's highly experienced in accounting but really wants to focus on getting clients? Because a lot of these courses are kind of like all in one, like start from the very beginning and learn a ton. So that's not this person. So So shameless plug, I purposely set up my courses to be like a la carte so you can kind of get what you want. So I have one that just focuses on marketing, and that is under $400. Other than that, depending on how much you want to invest, Bookkeeper Launch has a lot about marketing. Margie's class does not have that much about marketing, so her class is Acadian, so they don't really focus on marketing. The other one that says they focus a lot on marketing that I don't promote as much anymore is Booming Bookkeeping Business. Let me know in the comments if you've taken a class from him. Bill is his name, and I did a review of his course a long time ago and I've kind of just lost track of him, but he did say marketing was one of the stronger parts of his course. I do think his is pretty spendy, even more so. All right, this person asks, if I have 4 or 5 clients, do I need to like purchase 4 QuickBooks accounts? No, not really. So QuickBooks Online Accountant is set up so you can see all of your clients within there. So you could see all your 5 clients, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it's your choice how you want to manage the QuickBooks Online subscriptions for each client. So there is a fee for every client, but your client can just pay that. It can come straight out of their bank account. Maybe they had the QuickBooks Online before they even hired you, and then they would just add you with your email onto their QuickBooks account, so it would show up in yours. So that's one option, have the clients pay. Another one is you can get them a deal, like a wholesale price on QuickBooks, and then you can either just kind of roll that into your fees, or you can charge as a separate line item, like in an invoice, like, I'm paying $100 for your QuickBooks. So either you or the client can pay.